Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. God created war so that Americans would learn geography. Mark Twain. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Gettysburg, 1863, from Worthington Publishing. In Gettysburg, 1863, from Worthington Publishing, one player will take on the role of the Confederate Army, while one player will take on the role of the Union Army as they met on that fateful battlefield in July 1863. Now, this is a hex encounter war game. Your various counters are organized by their corps and also by their division. So you go ahead, you kind of got an order of battle chart. You can go ahead, you can set those up so you can see exactly the colors and the commanders that are commanding the various corps and division, and of course the army commanders Lee and Meade. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds here. There's a lot of great material here on this game and on this game system. So I'm just going to give you the basics and tell you what I think. Now, first of all, in this particular kind of system, you have the combat counter, but beneath it, you have another counter which has kind of that unit strength on it. So each unit is going to start out at a certain strength level, but over the course of the game, as you're involved in engagements, you are going to look at that bottom counter and twist it down or replace it with a lower numbered counter. So that's going to be kind of one of the hallmarks of this game system. Now, there are certain phases you're going to play through essentially here. First of all, you have a command phase. You're going to want to make sure that all of your units are within a certain number of hexes of their commanders. So the corps and the divisions, they want to be within certain, like I say, within certain hexes of their commanders. These things are going to be very important as you don't want to be too far out of supply. It's going to limit your ability to fight in the game. You're going to have essentially an organization phase where non-routed units can build breastworks, and then you're going to go ahead and go to the offensive artillery phase. Essentially, all of your artillery that is capable of firing, that, within range and, close to your commander or whatnot, you can go ahead and you can take shots at enemy units on the board. When firing artillery, of course, you're going to go ahead and check your line of sight. You're going to see if there's any kind of terrain modifiers or any other modifiers. If you're firing at, I believe your mounted infantry, mounted cavalry, that you get advantages there as well. But critically, your artillery can be limbered or unlimbered, and of course, it cannot fire if it is limbered. Next, you have a movement phase. Each of your units have point values assigned to them, like your infantry and unmounted cavalry. I think your limbered artillery, I think they can move 6. Your leaders can move 9. And of course, as you're spending these points to move, you are checking things like the terrain. You are also making sure if roads are going to give you any advantage there as well. But critically, some of these units can change formation. As I mentioned, you have mounted cavalry, mounted infantry, which can, of course, dismount to fight more effectively or to mount. Your infantry can move along roads in columns, but then, of course, you want to form lines when you're getting ready to fight. All these things, these formation changes will cost you movement points. Now, next you have combat. Now, essentially, what's going to happen here is your units, your infantry, your unlimbered artillery, your dismounted cavalry, they can all fire, but you've got to be adjacent, more or less, in order for these units to actually attack another unit. So you can go ahead and engage in the attack, but the defense gets to fire first. They get to fire at you before you get a chance to fire at them. Now, any unit that is being targeted can only be targeted once, but you can actually combine SPs from the different units to go ahead and target that one particular unit. Now, in combat, of course, you've got various DRMs, notably terrain and things of that nature. Now, also, too, if you are attacking, there's also going to be morale checks. Now, morale checks is also dependent upon kind of what level unit you have. Is it green, a brand new one? Black, you got some experience. Gold, your grizzled veterans. You go ahead, you figure out kind of where you are on that, and that's going to determine how well you are going to hold in combat. Now, of course, with combat and with the morale checks, you're consulting charts. Some issues may force you to kind of move your results kind of into different columns there to see how they play out. But essentially, you're going to go ahead and roll the die, look at all the factors, consult the charts, and determine exactly what's going to happen with your combat and the morale checks. Now, units, if they fail morale checks, can be routed. They can move back. You place panic markers there as well. That can have an effect on other units that are there near it. In addition to fire combat, you have direct melee combat. You can go ahead and do melee combat. Again, you're consulting the charts. And then you're going to go ahead and have a rally phase. You can go ahead and, if you started constructing breastworks, you can flip them to their breastwork sides. And any artillery units that fired, that you place markers there to let you know that you fired them, you can go ahead and remove those markers at that time. Next, it is time for the second player to begin. Now, the game comes with several different scenarios you can play, representing kind of the different days or different times of day for the battles. But what you do is you are trying to take certain victory hexes, and they have victory points. You're going to go ahead by the end of the scenario. Whoever has the most victory points wins. Gettysburg, 1863. We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review. Okay, so there is a lot more going on here. I'm just giving you the bare basics of how you play the game. This is I don't want to say it's a monster game. I don't think it's overly complex, but there is a lot going on here and a lot you need to be on top of. But it is a huge game. This is a massive board. Barely fits on my table. You have a ton of counters, and of course, not just the units. The infantry, the artillery, and what have you. But of course, you've got the commanders, you've got the breastworks, you've got victory point counters. So there's a lot of counters in this game. And in fact, setting up the game, kind of putting all the units on the kind of order of battle chart is almost a game in and of itself, getting all that stuff ready. I've seen people online kind of organize into the various corps into their own bags. I think that's probably the way I'll have to do it for future play, because there's a lot there. But this game is undeniably fun. It's good. It really sucks you into this battle. Gettysburg, to me, is one of the most iconic battles in history, certainly that I've studied. I mean, there are tons of iconic battles, but for me, one of the most interesting. When about 5 years ago, I did my research trip for my dissertation, and I actually went to Gettysburg. I was at the Army Heritage and Education Center, which was about 30 minutes away. I was doing some research there, and one day I had time, and I went to Gettysburg because I've always wanted to see that battlefield. And I got to tell you, I'd had a friend of mine years ago say, that battlefield is like a cathedral, and boy, I'll tell you, he was right. I'll tell you right now, if you don't believe in ghosts, go to Gettysburg. I mean, you can feel them. It's wild. It's wild what's going on there. There's been a few places in my life I can say that too. I've been to some of the concentration camps in Germany, and there's ghosts. But I got to tell you, so my point is, I'm very interested in this battle. I'm very interested in it, and this game, I think, does a really good job. I like this system, and I've got Franklin and 7 Days, which are part of these systems, and I'm hoping to get them to the table. It's kind of hard sometimes to get some of these hex and counter games to the table. I don't play them nearly as much as I used to, through no fault of my own. But I really have fun with them when I do get them to the table. And this system is pretty good because I like the way you have the strength unit, the strength counter underneath the major counter, and that way that's how you track the strength of the unit. You just kind of flip that down, and what that means is there's a granularity of strength. There's a nuance to the strength. It's not just 1-2 hits, he's gone. It's a real back and forth slog, as you can kind of see these strengths being whittled down by those numbers, which I think is just really good. The map itself, of course, much like the Gettysburg battlefield, has a lot of interesting choices. Now, obviously, you've got the fishhook, the basic fishhook in some of the scenarios here where you're trying to defend, um, Culp's Hill and further south along Cemetery Ridge and Little Round Top and what have you. And so it's interesting to kind of see those engagements play out here in this game. And I think they do a very good job in allowing those moments from the battle to breathe here without them being overwhelmed or scripted, and forcing you to do things a certain way. There's maneuver here. There's ways to move certain corps to certain areas of the battlefield and commanders and units. And so I think that's the flow of the game is really good. It's historical without being just so wedded to the history that you lose agency. I like that a lot. But so I like the game. It's a very good game. My only real complaints are it's a long game. I don't know that I wouldn't say that it's so long that it wears out its welcome, but just be prepared. You're playing. We played the shortest. I've just played the shortest scenario here, and it was pretty dang long. I think we were at it nearly 4 hours. It's a long game, and actually probably over 4 hours. Come to think of it. We spent quite a bit of time on it, but man, it's fun. It's a great system. It's a great hex and counter war game. I'm like I say, I'm hoping to get to Franklin and 7 Days Battle before too long, because this is great. And frankly, I might find those a little more accessible. I do believe they're kind of smaller games, and some of the scenarios are a little more manageable. I don't know how often I'm going to be getting Gettysburg out because it is such a big game and it is such a commitment, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm certainly going to hang on to it, and hopefully at some point I will get it out again. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say, as a war game on the Cody scale, I'm going to put this an 8 out of 10. I think this does a solid job of recreating the battle, while I say still giving the players some agency and some really fun choices. 8 out of 10, great game. Well, thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, I ask you to please check us out on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. I would ask you to please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. That would mean a lot to us here. And also, too, if you could please give us a thumb on Board Game Geek for this video, that would also help us out a lot as well. If you like this channel, please check out my other channel. That is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, military history, books on history. I even post some of my lectures on that channel. Please check that out. Please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. And if you really do enjoy the content we bring you here on The Discriminating Gamer, I would humbly ask you to click on the Super Thanks button and leave a tip. You know, ladies and gentlemen, war isn't about who is right. It's about who's left. Please somebody help me.